I was 30 years old when I realized home wasn't a place but a battlefield. I had just stepped off a 13-hour flight from Tokyo, my body heavy with exhaustion, my heart aching for the small comforts of my own apartment. All I wanted was silence, maybe a hot shower, maybe to let the city lights blur through my window as I fell asleep. Instead, I unlocked my front door and walked straight into chaos balloons strung across the ceiling. Confetti littering the floor, voices I didn't recognize, echoing through the space I paid for. A stranger pressed a deviled egg into my hand before I could even speak. My suitcase slipped from my fingers. 40 people, most of them complete strangers, were packed into my apartment like it was a rented event hall. And then I saw her. My sister, 7 months pregnant, barefoot on my white couch, opening gifts as though she were a queen on her throne. She looked up at me, blinked once, then laughed. "Oh," she said, like I was the intruder, like my life had been rewritten without my consent. "I thought you moved out." I didn't move. I didn't scream. I just stood there, the air collapsing around me, as though I had been erased in my own story. My bookshelves gone. My plants wilted. My dishes passed around like party trays. And then my mother appeared. Her lips tight with that familiar smile, the one she wore when she was being cruel, in a way she thought no one could call her on. She handed me her coat. "Just help serve, okay? Don't ruin your sister's day." It was the whisper that killed me. Not the party, not the theft of my space. The whisper, that soft, slicing reminder that in her eyes I was not a daughter but a problem to be managed. I took the coat. I hung it up. And then I walked straight into my bedroom, the place I thought would be untouched, only to find it stripped, turned into a storage room for diapers and baby gifts. I sat on the edge of the bare bed frame, staring at the floor, while 50 feet away, they toasted to a new life, trampling over mine like it meant nothing. That night, when the party ended and the apartment reeked of baby lotion and stale wine, I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I simply changed the locks. 2 days later, when they came banging, screaming, demanding entry, they discovered the truth: the locks weren't the only thing I had changed. Something inside me had locked as well. Because here's the truth, no one ever asked me. The apartment was mine. The lease was in my name. The utilities, the Wi-Fi, the rent, all of it. I had kept it going even while I was working in Tokyo, foolishly trusting my family when they begged to watch over the place. My sister claimed she was uncomfortable during pregnancy. My mom said it would only be temporary. I believed them. I trusted them. I gave them space in my life, not knowing they would use it to erase me entirely. When I returned, every drawer was filled with baby clothes, my closet emptied of my own things, my books donated, my journals tossed into a trash bag with a sticky note on top that said, "Shred." There was no space left for me, so I made space with fire in my chest and clarity in my bones. I called my landlord, asked if anyone had submitted a sublease or change of tenant. He said no. Asked if as leaseholder I could change the locks. He said yes, and so I did. That night I boxed up every pastel decoration, every bottle warmer, every fake plant they brought into my home. I stacked it all neatly in the hallway outside my door, and then I drew a boundary I should have drawn years ago. A single text to the family group chat. "Apartment is no longer available for use. Please collect your items from the hallway. Do not re-enter. I'm serious." The messages lit up my phone like fireworks. "Danielle, WTF. Your sister is pregnant. Don't be cruel. Where's mom's purse?" And finally, my mother. "I raised you better than this." That one made me laugh. When they came back days later, pounding on my door, sobbing like squatters left out in the cold, I didn't open. I poured myself tea into the one mug they hadn't given away, slid my AirPods in, and let them sit in their silence. But silence doesn't stay still in my family. The next day, my cousin Rachel, the only one with a backbone, texted me. "They're telling everyone you lost it, saying Tokyo changed you, saying you're on something." Of course, when they couldn't control me, they'd rewrite me, turn me into the unstable one. And then came my Uncle Greg, the family lawyer, calling to plead on their behalf. "Your mother is very hurt. Can't you be a little more understanding?" Understanding. As though they hadn't thrown a baby shower with 40 strangers in my home while I was overseas. as though tossing my journals into the trash was a mistake easily forgiven, as though my silence didn't matter so long as their noise could drown it out. That night, I stopped waiting for them to understand. I stopped hoping they'd acknowledge what they'd done. I decided instead to reclaim everything they had stolen from my space, from my voice, from my life. I remember the exact moment I realized this wasn't just about an apartment. It was about my entire life. The way they had always treated me like the strong one, the independent one, the one who didn't need space or attention or care. My sister cried I was pushed aside. My mother demanded I was expected to deliver. And when I dared to want something for myself, I was guilted, shamed, or silenced. My absence in Tokyo had simply given them the chance to do what they had been doing for years, erase me. So I made a decision, not just to keep them out, but to take back what was mine fully and permanently. The first step was cleansing the space. I hired a cleaning crew to scrub every last trace of their takeover from my home. Every balloon scrap, every confetti particle clogging the vents, every smudge of pink handprint on the fridge. I replaced my couch, my rug, even my dishes. I rehung the art they'd taken down. I lit the jasmine candle I used to burn every Sunday. Piece by piece, I stitched myself back into my home. And then I remembered something I had almost forgotten, a sealed envelope tucked away in a lockbox for years my inheritance. When my father died, he left my sister the car, my mother the house and me, a check for $48,000. I still remember holding it at the funeral, my name written in his sharp block letters across the front. My mother leaned over, whispering like it was an embarrassment. "Put that away. You're not going to blow it on traveling or some apartment in the city, right?" I was 26, and in that moment, I understood no matter what I achieved, she would always see me as someone who needed managing. So I had hidden the check, for years, untouched, waiting for the right moment, and now I knew exactly what to do. Within days, I signed papers for the unit directly below mine. 3 bedrooms, 2 entrances, more than enough space to rebuild. My savings and my father's check covered the cost. I didn't tell a soul. Quietly, I moved in. And then I turned my original apartment, the one they had claimed as their kingdom, into something untouchable. I listed it as a short-term corporate rental. Within a week, a biotech firm leased it for $4,800 a month. The place they had once used to host parties without my consent was now a fortress rented out to executives who had no idea my family ever existed. But money wasn't the point. This wasn't about profit, it was about power. About reminding them that I wasn't their doormat anymore. A few days later, my sister called from a blocked number. I let it ring. Then came a voicemail, her voice sticky with fake sweetness. "Hey Danny, just wondering if we could swing by for a couple hours. We, left the bassinet and some gifts. Mom said you'd understand." Understand. That word's again wielded like a weapon. Understand that they could throw me out of my own life and I'd still open the door. Understand that their comfort outweighed my dignity. No, not anymore. I didn't respond. I wanted them to feel the silence, the void they had created when they erased me. Then, as if to prove they'd never learn, a Facebook event popped up: baby brunch hosted by the Daniels family. Same pink banner, same stolen sense of entitlement, this time at my mother's house. I clicked not going. That was when the unraveling began. The leasing company for my building called to say people were loitering in the hallway outside my unit. I checked the security footage, and there they were. My mother, my sister, her fiancé, not even knocking, just yelling. "She can't do this. We built that apartment. Open the door, Danielle." But it wasn't theirs. It had never been theirs. And now it was mine in a way they couldn't touch. I filed a harassment report, sent the footage to security, and issued one last group text: "If you show up at my home again, any floor, any door, I will file a restraining order. This is no longer a warning." For the first time, there was silence. No replies, no excuses, just silence. But silence in my family was never peace. It was plotting, waiting, and I knew they weren't finished yet. Because beneath all their outrage, all their fake victimhood, there was one truth they couldn't admit: I had finally broken free. And freedom for them was the greatest betrayal of all. The silence lasted less than a week. Then came the rumors. My cousin Rachel called me late one night. Her voice hushed, like she was smuggling truth through enemy lines. "Danny," she whispered, "you need to know Mom's telling everyone you stole from her. She says the apartment was in her name." I almost laughed, because I had receipts, the lease, the payments, the deed to the new unit. But beneath the anger, there was something colder weariness. They weren't just trying to shame me. They were trying to erase me again, rewrite the story so that I was the villain. And I was tired of playing the role they assigned me. So I stopped waiting for them to collapse. I struck first. At 2:14 a.m., the idea came cold, clean, final. The next morning, I hired an interior design company. Discreet, expensive, worth every penny. They staged my old apartment, the one now rented to the biotech firm, into something sacred, lush, velvet chairs, gold-framed artwork books by Audre Lorde and Maya Angelou arranged like altars. On the entry table, a simple card: "Welcome to your sanctuary, you are safe here." I posted the photos to Instagram with a single caption: "She reclaimed her space and never looked back." No tags, no location. But I knew my mother's fake account at BlessedNana1956 would see it. 46 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "That's your place. You're renting it out like a hotel. After all we did." Then my sister: "You're seriously profiting off the apartment we made beautiful." I left them both on red. Instead, I donated everything they'd left behind: the bassinet, the swing, the unopened gifts, even the balloon arch, to a women's shelter. I sent the donation receipt to my mother's email with the subject line, "In your name." And for the first time in years, silence meant something real. But what broke them wasn't the money or the receipts. It was the party. 2 weeks later, I hosted a housewarming in my new unit. Simple, intimate, 15 guests who actually knew me. There was wine, jazz, laughter, the kind of joy that doesn't demand you shrink to fit. At 9:34 p.m., my building manager texted me, "Your mom and sister tried to come up. Said they were invited." I told them to leave. I looked around at the people in my home, people who loved me without strings, and I raised my glass. "Thank you," I texted back. They weren't. For once, I didn't feel guilty. For once, I wasn't flinching at the sound of the elevator or tensing at every knock. I slept like stone, not because my life was perfect, but because my peace was finally mine. But I knew my mother. Silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Sure enough, a week later, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside, a typed notice on fake legal stationery demanding the immediate release of the Daniels family belongings. A list of items I'd already donated. They had actually tried to serve me fictional eviction papers for an apartment I owned. And something strange rose in me then. Not rage, not grief, pity. They were clinging to the ghost of control, unable to accept that the locks had changed. That I had changed. I didn't respond. I simply forwarded the letter to my lawyer, who was finalizing the LLC I'd set up for the rental unit. The apartment was no longer even in my name directly, it was a business. Protected, untouchable. But I wasn't finished. The following Sunday, I drove to my mother's house. Not to see her, but to leave a gift. On the porch, I placed the only thing I hadn't donated: the pink guest book from the baby shower. I had it rebound in black leather. Inside the cover, I wrote, "For every time you tried to erase me from my own life, here's a keepsake of the last day you ever succeeded." I didn't knock. I didn't ring. I left it there like ashes. Later that evening, my building manager flagged me down. "That woman you warned us about, she showed up again." He pulled up the security footage. My mother standing in front of the elevator, clutching the guest book like it was burning her hands. Her eyes glassy, her mouth trembling. She didn't ask to be let up. She didn't cause a scene. She just stood there staring at the camera before turning and walking out the door. No tantrum, no performance, just gone. And that's when I knew it was over. That night, I stood on my balcony with the city lights flickering like quiet applause beneath me. For the first time, I whispered into the dark, "This is mine now. Not just the apartment, not just the deed or the walls or the silence. My life, my peace, my worth." I didn't post another photo. I didn't drop cryptic captions or subtle jabs. I let stillness be my statement. Because I had finally learned that closure wasn't a conversation. It wasn't an apology or a tearful confession. Closure was something colder, sharper, but far more honest. Sometimes you build it yourself, brick by brick, out of everything they tried to use to destroy you. Months passed and I breathed easier. I stopped waiting for the knock, the call, the next ambush. I lived. I hosted dinners with friends. I started writing again, filling notebooks instead of watching them tossed into trash bags. And then spring came, and with it something unexpected. I hosted a tenant appreciation brunch for the corporate unit downstairs. My first guest was a young woman named Alicia and her toddler son. She cried as she signed the lease, whispering it was the first place she had ever had in her own name. No boyfriend, no mother-in-law, just hers. I walked her through the apartment like I was handing her something sacred. I showed her the window ledge I used to sit on when I was younger, back when my family fought and I disappeared into books. She touched the ledge and said, "I feel safe here." And for the first time, I felt something that wasn't rage or grief or exhaustion. I felt joy. Because in giving someone else the home I never had, I had reclaimed the girl I used to be. But healing is never a straight line. A few weeks later, my phone lit up with one last message from my sister. A photo of her standing in front of our mom's old house captioned, "Guess who's moving in, come by if you want to see your niece. She asks about you." For a moment my heart clenched. Not because I missed her, but because some part of me still wanted to be missed. Still wanted her to acknowledge the hole she'd carved into me. I stared at that picture for a long time. Then I looked around at my own walls. I chose walls, I owned walls no one could strip bare but me. And I understood something that had taken me 30 years to learn: forgiveness isn't an invitation. It's a release. I could forgive her and still never step foot in that house. I could love the memory of who we once were and still protect the woman I had fought to become. So I typed back, "Tell her auntie says hi and that she's always in my heart." Then I blocked the number, not out of hate, out of healing. That morning, I stood barefoot in my kitchen, the same place I had once cried and nearly given up in. I poured a glass of orange juice, leaned against the counter, and let the sunlight pour over me. For the first time, I listened to nothing but my own breath. And in that soft silence, I heard it: freedom. This is what I want you watching this to remember sometimes. Family isn't safety. Sometimes forgiveness isn't reconciliation. And sometimes love means letting go, not holding on. I thought my story was about revenge, about teaching them a lesson, but really it was about building a life they could never touch. A life where peace wasn't borrowed, it was mine. So, if you've ever felt erased, if you've ever been treated like a ghost in your own home, know this: you are not invisible. You can rebuild, you can reclaim, and you can choose silence that heals instead of silence that haunts. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched something in you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more stories like this. And if you've ever fought to reclaim your own peace, tell me in the comments. I promise I'll read every word.